Well, I'm going to pick up right where you left off with your comments about COVID and the impact that it's had on the community, mental health, the children, domestic violence, all that's going to roll straight downhill into my court. You know, we deal with anything dealing with crimes against children, anything where the children commit the crimes, custody, visitation, child support. So everything that involves the family and the bad things that involve the family come straight to my court. So we're starting to see that. Just going straight to our budget, because we're pretty simple for you guys. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 170,000 or something for things of like postage.
Chief Judge.
Yes, sir.
Your clicker is right there
yeah.
if you need it.
Okay. It's not a very exciting PowerPoint. Obviously, here's our organizational structure. We've got 38 clerks, 6 judges. We've got 2 contract employees, or one right now, but she's not listed, correct? And this is Amy Burnham. She is the clerk of the court. And Amy's been with us for 4 years now, I believe, and she does just a great job. So our total budget is $217,000. Most of that is, like I said, postage, phones, these types of things. And then you guys have been generous in giving us some supplements to our clerk's salary, which have been greatly appreciated. And I'm here asking for more, frankly. And this is a big packet of information that we've given you. A lot of it is dealing with comparing city salaries versus state salaries. But the bottom line is our clerks at the beginning stages earn $30,000 a year. And once you figure out deductions for health care, they make about $14.75 an hour. So probably what they would make at Target or Starbucks or something like that. You guys, like I said, have been generous. I think we're getting a $1,200 a year salary supplement for them. I'm asking for an additional amount of money, basically an additional $86,000. 66 to increase the current supplement, and 20 to increase our manpower contract. The manpower contracts are important because when a citizen comes in to file custody visitation petitions or whatever it may be, we have a division that puts that paperwork, those petitions, into the computer system, and then it's processed and eventually assigned a court date. We are currently 4 months behind in getting those petitions submitted into our system. So if you were to come in and file a petition for custody and visitation of your child or children, in 4 months you'll get a court date. Now that court date would be then 2 more months after that. So by the time that you file to the time that you're coming to court is about 6 months. And that's a lot due to the backlog that, I mean, we were a busy court before COVID. We had maybe 27,000 filings per year, making us number 2 probably behind Fairfax. And the filings reduced during COVID. We're creeping back towards pre-COVID levels now. I think we're at 25,000 filings estimated for the year. And we're just overwhelmed. And so that's part of the reason the backlog exists. It's just an intensive process, taking the filings, whether they're submitted by attorneys or by pro se litigants, self-represented litigants. And so once the court date is assigned, you might come into court, like I said, 6 months after you filed, and if you need a contested trial date where you need maybe more than 1 hour in front of the judge, we're going to set you out another 4 or 5 months, just depending on the court's docket. So it's literally just about a year before you can have a real substantive hearing in our court. So the contracted manpower will help us go through the backlog. I think we have just hired 2. Are we fully staffed now? So we're still down 2. Once again, having these supplements is our answer to try and retain employees and retain the clerks. Over the last year and a half, we've lost nearly half our workforce. And I think there's a chart where it basically shows you they're leaving for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office for $10,000 more. We had somebody leave for the Sheriff's Office for a clerical position for $5,000 more. Certainly the private attorneys can pay more in that type of thing. But our training is very intensive. And once the clerks are trained, they've got good skills that are then marketable, and they get swooped up and taken by other entities, including the city attorney's office. No offense, yeah, because I mean this is a good advancement for the young people, but it's a challenge for us to retain the right people, and you need a lot of institutional knowledge, as everybody can understand in their respective businesses. So that's essentially what we're asking for. Eventually, I've got to stop asking you to keep increasing the money. I know that you do not want to pay City of Virginia Beach employees more than my clerks who are state employees. And so we're just trying to find that right equilibrium. We're hopeful that the General Assembly this year will give us more money for the clerks' positions all across the state. But even if they give us $3,000 or $4,000, and even if you were to generously give us that extra $3,000 per clerk, they're still going to be paid less than the city counterparts. So that's the budget, our budget proposal.
Yeah. Before I go to council, could I just ask a question? With the backlog, back when I was a practicing physical therapist, I worked in the homes with families where there was domestic violence and abuse. Isn't there a lot of times where people's families are at high risk of violence and just bad things happening while these delays are happening? If it's taken 6 months to get to trial and you're coexisting with somebody that is hostile to a spouse or children, does that happen?
100%.
Yeah.
It's hard to quantify because we've never been a rocket docket court where you get in immediately. So the situation has existed, but COVID has certainly made it worse. The delays are worse, and there's no way around that for sure.
Thank you. Anybody else at this? Sabrina and then Guy.
Good afternoon, Judge Hollowell. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
And I just have to say, I'm just astounded by the way you advocate for your staff. And I have to say that because I don't see that often. And I appreciate that. The other thing I will say is I also understand $30,000. I understand that. I used to make $28,000 for over a decade. That's difficult. It's difficult when you have children, to take care of them, and you're trying to make ends meet. And so I know they work hard. I know they are multitasking. I know there's a backlog. And I hope there is something we can do to support, to provide that supplemental income that they need. Otherwise, there's going to continue to be that flight from that department. And so I certainly will support that. The other part I have a question is not pertaining to the budget, but I know there were some concerns that you had, some other concerns. Like I remember, I think it was the lighting, I think it was the intercom system.
Yes.
And forgive me if this has already been taken care of, but I just wanted to kind of follow up to make sure that, and see how that's going as well. Well,
first of all, thank you very much for the support for the supplement, and you've been a supporter from the get-go. I will tell you that the courthouse, I'm sure you guys know. If you don't know, sort of shame on you. The courthouse is in disrepair. The circuit court, the fourth floor of the circuit court has a bathroom that can't get hot water and hasn't for 10 years. You know about the escalator problems. They rarely work. In my court, the juvenile court is private and confidential, so it's not an open courtroom. So we call in cases one at a time. and it necessitates us using an intercom system, we will do a case, dispense with it, call the next case. Now, sometimes we call the next case and the doors don't open, and nobody comes in, and so that's an easy case for me, dismissed. Call the next case. Well, sometimes, and I would say that it happens every week, somebody will come in, knock on the door at 12:30, 1 o'clock when we're sort of finished for the day. I've been waiting since 8 or 8:30 or 9 o'clock, whereas my case hasn't been called. Well, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, we called your case at 10:15. You didn't show up. We dismissed your petitions. So going back to my earlier comments, they might have to be waiting another 6 months, 10 months to get back in front of the court. So the intercom system is a real issue. We've had ComIT work on it from their end. Sometimes the new phone systems, it's a work in progress to finally answer your question.
Okay.
So.
Okay. And I think, Mr. Duhaney, we've had some conversations about that, and I guess I should follow up with you in terms of how that's going and in the future, how we're going to address that.
So staff is doing their absolute most to try to address the systems. It's behind. It's a lot of work that needs to be done in the courthouse. I think staff has stepped up their efforts tremendously to help all the judges out in the various courtrooms, but it's a significant hurdle, and as we see with the budget every year, the needs that we have greatly outpace the funding that we have to cover those needs. But we are being as attentive as we possibly can to help address the issues in the courts.
There's issues dealing with our swipe cards. Everybody's got the Lenal the card system swipe into private access doors. 4 of my courtrooms don't have that. So anybody can walk into the courtroom, then walk into the private space of the clerk's office or the judge's spaces. We've been told that that's been in the works for years. The city manager has put Miss Monica Chaparro, sorry about that. She's met with us, and I think that we're having sort of a new era of communication with the city manager's office that we're appreciative of. But there's too many issues to go through, frankly, just with the physical courthouse itself.
Sure. Well, I would like to continue, and I will continue to follow up with you. It is concerning to have a facility that important that's not properly working and up to par, and then the safety and security issues.
I'll issue another one. Several of our courtrooms, and not just in juvenile court, but I believe also in general district court, don't have lockups. So in certain times when judges are sitting in these courtrooms, they have a criminal case and there's an incarcerated person, they are walked down the hallway right next to my office, right next to the other judge's office, right next to the clerk's cubicles. And there's always a sheriff's deputy with them, but it's just not, it wasn't a well-designed building from that aspect.
Well, Mr. Duhaney, what about the bathroom? Is that something we can get to pretty quickly? I'm sure.
I'm not sure about
The hot water,
Okay.
Judge Lilly will be happy that I'm bringing this up.
So in the budget, we did include proposed increase in the budget to take care of some of these issues as well. A lot of it is we're a city with a myriad of needs, and not enough resources to cover all of it. So our team has developed a list, and our team are putting that list in place and putting forward propositions to pay for that for council's further review and consideration. In particular, for the intercom issue, there is a proposal inside the budget to provide funding so that we can come up with a fix to fix the intercom issue as well.
Well, the only other thing I would just say is I hear and see and observe that there are some departments that are faring a bit better than others. And then there are some departments who have been waiting and waiting and waiting. And so I'm just hoping, especially with the myriad of issues here, that we can really give this some priority, because I sense as though they've been waiting for some time. And so I just like to really see that as a priority, and I'll just continue to follow up. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for the judge? Guy? And then John.
Barbara, please.
Barbara.
Thank you, Judge Hollowell. Appreciate. I say this every year since I've been on council, but my wife is a retired juvenile and domestic relations court judge, and I have a pretty good idea of what she thinks about the various problems we've already discussed today. But I will say that gives me some bias, perhaps, that I have to be careful about. But I do spend a lot of time with judges. In fact, I worked in the judicial system myself for a few years, not too long ago. And the same issues that Sheriff Stolley was talking about trying to balance the federal, state, local funding, particularly as it relates to Dillon Rule State, is now that I have to deal with it very up close and personal, it's a problem across the board. But I think our most vulnerable people are our elderly people and our juvenile younger people. And the one thing I hear from judges talking off the record to each other, and I hear a lot of it because I have a lot of friends that are judges and I have a spouse that is a retired judge, is this clerk situation. I think the clerks, they are such a linchpin of the system. They are the fulcrum on which so much of the real justice gets dispensed, and doing it in a timely way. Justice delayed is justice denied in many cases and in many sort of variations of that theme. And I can tell you the judges are not concerned about nearly as much about their comfort levels, and there's some issues about their comfort and safety, which have concerned me very much over the years. They're not nearly as concerned about anything regarding their own comfort, their own salaries, their own issues, as they are for these clerks. Like you, they care about it not just because they have to work with these people every day and they want their fellow workers to be paid fairly and well, which is a natural, but also because of the impact that it has on their ultimate clients, which are the children and the parents that appear before them on a daily basis. So this is an incredibly important, vulnerable group of people that we have a lot of needs in the city, but none, as far as I'm concerned, come much higher than taking care of the kids and their parents. And as the sheriff indicates too, this pays back. The payback is many, many-fold. If we can find the money to do it here, we get paid back by kids that grow up in a healthier situation, become, and their parents are able to be, who are distracted by problems their kids may have, maybe return to their productive lives as well. So I hope we can find some money to continue to supplement the clerks, notwithstanding that I feel like the state ought to be doing more. I feel like the state judicial system ought to be much more aggressive in seeking funding from that. I think they can do it, should do it. I've always thought that ever since my first day working for the.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I've had the same feeling.
Working in that office, and I'll continue to advocate that as well. Thank you.
Okay, Barbara, then John.
Sort of back at the very beginning of this whole session, we were talking about state responsibilities in city. If we could have that broken down for the courts, I suppose our local requirement is that we provide the facility, but then what's the state's responsibility? I think we really need to make that clear for all of these things, please.
All right, I'll make sure we get in the next Friday package.
Okay, I was just looking at some of these things.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that you pointed out it's, I guess, G on the packet. This was prepared by Ms. Burnham for the Association of the General District Court Clerks and sent to the General Assembly. And so this just gives you a breakdown of what the duties and responsibilities of the district court clerks are. And I'll take just one, if I could be, well, if I could take one more minute, and you're talking about rehabilitation and about paying forward or reaping forward. The court services unit is juvenile probation here in Virginia Beach. And they have the exact same problem that I do with the clerks. The probation officers here in Virginia Beach work harder. We're a best practices court. And actually, Judge Tower and Judge Bryan, Debbie Bryan, who is recently retired, or is going to be retired at the end of this month, they were instrumental in bringing about what's called the Juvenile Detention Alternative Incarceration Program, or JDI. And they worked very closely with the court services unit here in Virginia Beach. And they basically, tried to do that exact same thing. Put the services towards the juvenile delinquents who've been, processed in the system to make sure that they don't come back. So they put services. That's one good thing about the juvenile court, is we don't just toss them in detention and shake our fingers at them, although sometimes that has to happen. But we do put services towards rehabilitation. And the court doesn't do it. It's all left to the court services unit. They have the same problem we do. Their probation officers leave for adult probation. Their probation officers leave for other cities. And frankly, our court services unit works them harder on behalf of the kids than if they went to a neighboring city. And so I know I'm a broken record just asking for more money, but
No.
I mean they would benefit the same way.
Judge Hollowell, we appreciate your advocacy.
If I can just get back to
sure.
Yes,
what
ma'am.
my comments were. I really, it's just, our taxpayers cannot afford to pay the local responsibility and the state's responsibility. I mean, they're paying state taxes, and I guess the state has got a whole lot of money they're trying to decide what they're going to do with. Well, maybe if they lived up to their requirements, then it wouldn't fall on our local taxpayers for our local taxes to have to make up the difference. Something's wrong somewhere in here with us hearing this over and over and over again, that the state is not doing enough and we need to make up the difference. That just means our taxpayers have to pay more. And that's what I guess we're going to be figuring out in this budget. But I think we really have to, if it's something that we need to have a good sit-down talk with our General Assembly people, then maybe that's what we need to do. But the responsibility needs to be where it's supposed to be. And it all falls down to our taxpayers to have to pay more to make up the difference. And how much we're willing to raise our taxes, our local taxes, to do what the state's supposed to be doing, I kind of think is the question we're being talking about here today, an awful lot.
Thank you. John?
No questions for the honorable judge, but an observation. We find ourselves with facilities that don't have hot water, aren't functioning, but when we meet and talk about paying excess value for property that we acquire, like $3 million more than we should have, when we appropriate out of cycle $54.9 million of cash from surplus of last year, and we don't hear all these lists, we make bad decisions. I don't know that we would have given $54.9 million in cash if we knew we had all these critical facility needs. But we did, because we didn't hear that story. And that's why when we make these out-of-cycle allocations of surpluses in cash, without having an end-to-end understanding of what other bills are unpaid, I'm sure Princeton High School, all their bathrooms work. In fact, I might go check on that this week just to confirm that's true. So we should, and I'm sure their stairwells work, and I'm sure their elevators work. So this is an observation for us. This is why we cannot make decisions to spend dollars out of cycle and tunes of $54.9 million of cash or acquire property if we aren't informed of all the bills that are out there. That we might say, that might be nice, but this is more important. So now we find ourselves we can recover some of that money, and I'll be talking about that in a later event. But this is why we have to be more strategic in our expenditures of surplus cash, because we are suboptimizing, and then we get a bill here that we all want to take care of, and then we talk about, well, we have a lot of needs, but not the money. But we had money. I'm sure we could have done an elevator at a $54.9 million. I'm pretty confident we could fix an escalator. So just an observation to my peers that we have some real hard looking to do about past decisions that we made that we can reverse in this budget.
Hey, anyone else at this point? Judge, once again,
Thank you,
thank you for your advocacy, stepping forward, and I tell you what, there's some problems out
Everyone
there.
has an open invitation, come to juvenile court anytime you want, anytime you want to discuss things. Thank you very
You've got
much.
it. Thanks very
All right.
much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Judge.